A group of men move silently through the darkness. Their faces painted. Their identities hidden. They board 3 ships. And in the next 3 hours, they will commit an act that changes history forever. 90,000 pounds of tea thrown into icy water. This is not just about tea. This is the moment when people, ordinary people, farmers, shopkeepers, blacksmiths, decide they will no longer obey an empire that refuses to hear them. But how did it come to this? How did 13 colonies, separated by hundreds of miles, speaking different dialects, following different religions, unite against the most powerful empire on earth? This is the story of the American Revolution and the founding of a nation. A story of courage, betrayal, sacrifice, and an idea so dangerous that kings across the world trembled at its words. This is how America was born. For years, the British Empire ignored the cries of its American colonies. The colonists begged London to hear their grievances, to understand their suffering, to treat them as equals under British law. But the empire dismissed their pleas. Every ignored letter, every rejected petition, every arrogant response from Parliament fed a flame that would soon explode into revolution. It began quietly. Arguments over taxes, debates about rights, bitter discussions in taverns and town squares. The Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, laws passed in London by men who had never set foot in America. Laws that demanded obedience without representation. The colonists asked a simple question: how can you tax us when we have no voice in your parliament? Britain's answer was clear: you will obey, because we command it. But there were those who refused to accept this answer. In the shadows, a movement was forming. They called themselves the Sons of Liberty. Meeting in taverns and alleyways, they organized protests, distributed secret messages, and pushed a frightened population toward open rebellion. Samuel Adams, a brilliant agitator with a fierce hatred of tyranny. John Hancock, a wealthy merchant willing to risk everything. Paul Revere, a silversmith whose hands would soon carry warnings that saved lives. These men understood something the British did not. Ideas can be more powerful than armies. And their idea was simple, dangerous, revolutionary. That government exists to serve the people, not the other way around. March 5, 1770. A cold night in Boston. A tense crowd gathers near the customs house, shouting at British soldiers. Snowballs are thrown, then rocks, then insults that cut deeper than blades. The soldiers are nervous, outnumbered, frightened. Someone shouts, "Fire!" No one knows who. The soldiers fire into the crowd. 5 colonists fall dead in the snow. The blood freezes on the cobblestones. News of the massacre spreads like wildfire through the colonies. Samuel Adams uses it brilliantly, printing images of British soldiers murdering innocent civilians. The propaganda works. Trust between Britain and America, already fragile, shatters completely. And then, that winter night in 1773, the Tea Act. Another law, another tax, another insult. But this time, the colonists do not petition. They do not protest peacefully. They act, disguised as Mohawk warriors. The Sons of Liberty board 3 ships in Boston Harbor. Methodically, silently, they break open 342 chests of tea and dump them into the black water. The message is clear: we will not bow to unjust power. Britain's response is swift and brutal. The coercive acts, which the colonists call the intolerable acts. Boston's port is closed. Massachusetts loses its charter. British soldiers can be housed in private homes. The message from London is unmistakable: You will be punished. You will obey. But punishment only breeds more resistance. The colonies begin to unite. April 18, 1775. British General Thomas Gage receives orders from London. Arrest the rebel leaders. Seize their weapons. End this before it spreads. 700 British soldiers march out of Boston under cover of darkness, heading toward Concord, where the colonists have hidden military supplies. But the colonists have spies everywhere. Paul Revere mounts his horse. He rides through the night, risking capture, risking death, galloping through sleeping towns and shouting his warning. The regulars are out! The regulars are out! Church bells ring. Drums beat. Militiamen grab their muskets and powder horns, kissing their wives goodbye, not knowing if they will return. Dawn breaks over Lexington Green. 77 militiamen stand in formation, facing 700 British regulars. Captain John Parker, their leader, is calm. Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let it begin here. The British approach. An officer shouts, "Lay down your arms, you damned rebels!" The colonists hesitate. Then, a shot. No one knows who fired. British? American? An accident? A provocation? It doesn't matter. The British soldiers fire a volley. 8 colonists fall dead. 10 more are wounded. The American Revolution has begun. The British march onto Concord, searching for weapons. But at the North Bridge, they meet resistance. Hundreds of militiamen from surrounding towns have gathered. These are not professional soldiers. They are farmers, blacksmiths, merchants, fathers and sons standing shoulder to shoulder. The British fire first. The Americans fire back. And this time, the British retreat. All the way back to Boston, militiamen hide behind trees and stone walls, firing at the confused redcoats. By the time the British reach safety, they have lost nearly 300 men. The Empire is not invincible. The farmers proved it. Within days, 15,000 colonial militiamen surround Boston. The British are trapped, besieged in their own city, supplied only by ships from across the Atlantic. But the Americans have a problem. They are not an army. They are a mob, disorganized, undisciplined, without a commander. The Continental Congress meets in Philadelphia and makes a choice that will change everything. George Washington, a Virginia plantation owner, tall, dignified, a veteran of the French and Indian War, not a brilliant tactician, but a man of unshakable character. He accepts command, fully aware of what failure means: death by hanging, disgrace, the end of everything. He rides north to take command of the Continental Army. June 17, 1775. Before Washington arrives, the British decide to break the siege. Colonial forces have fortified Breed's Hill, overlooking Boston Harbor. British General William Howe orders a frontal assault with 2,500 men. The Americans wait behind their earthworks, watching the redcoats march uphill in perfect formation. Drums beating, bayonets gleaming. Colonel William Prescott gives the order. "Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes." The British come closer. Closer. Fire! A devastating volley tears into the British ranks. Dozens fall. The survivors retreat in confusion. Howe orders a second attack. Same result. More dead. More wounded. A third attack finally breaks the American line, but only because the colonists run out of ammunition. The British take the hill, but at a terrible cost, over 1,000 casualties. The Americans lose fewer than 500. The lesson is clear: the rebels will fight. They will bleed the British for every inch of ground. Washington arrives at Cambridge and is horrified. The Continental Army is not an army. It is chaos. Men come and go as they please. Officers have no authority. There are no uniforms, little ammunition, and almost no discipline. Washington gets to work. He enforces strict discipline, punishments for desertion, training drills, fortifications. Slowly, painfully, he molds this mob into something resembling a fighting force. But he knows the truth. If the British attack with their full strength, his army will be crushed. The army faces another crisis: supplies. There is almost no gunpowder. By some estimates, each soldier has enough for only 9 shots. Food is scarce. Winter is coming. Washington writes desperate letters to Congress, begging for supplies, for money, for anything. But there is something even more valuable than supplies flowing into the American camp: information. Across the colonies, a network of spies begins to form. Men and women risk their lives to gather intelligence on British troop movements, to intercept messages, to pass coded letters through enemy lines. In New York, a spy ring operates under the codename Culper. They send information to Washington using invisible ink, hidden in ordinary letters. One woman, known only as Agent 355, provides crucial intelligence from inside British-occupied New York. Her identity remains a mystery to this day. Another spy, Nathan Hale, is not so lucky. Captured by the British, he is hanged without trial. His last words become legend. "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." These secret warriors, operating in shadows, play a crucial role in keeping Washington's army alive. 4 months. The colonists fight without declaring independence. Many still hope for reconciliation. They send petitions to King George III, begging him to hear their grievances, to restore their rights as British subjects. The king's response is cold. The colonies are in rebellion. They will be crushed. That response changes everything. In taverns and homes across America, people begin to whisper a dangerous word: independence. January 1776. A pamphlet appears, written by an Englishman named Thomas Paine. He calls it Common Sense. Paine's words are simple, direct, powerful. Everything that is right or reasonable pleads for separation. The blood of the slain. The weeping voice of nature cries 'tis time to part. He attacks the very idea of monarchy. Of more worth is one honest man to society than all the crowned ruffians that ever lived. The pamphlet spreads like wildfire. Within months, hundreds of thousands of copies are in circulation. Suddenly, independence is no longer a radical idea. It is common sense. June 1776. The Continental Congress debates. Some delegates fear independence will lead to chaos, to invasion, to destruction. But others, led by John Adams of Massachusetts, argue passionately, we are already at war. We are already dying. Let us at least die for something worth dying for. The Congress appoints a committee to draft a declaration. Thomas Jefferson, a young Virginia lawyer with a gift for words, takes up his pen. He writes through the night. Benjamin Franklin and John Adams offer suggestions, but the words are mostly Jefferson's. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These words are more than a declaration of independence. They are a challenge to every king, every tyrant, every government that claims power without the consent of the governed. July 4th, 1776. 56 men signed their names to the Declaration of Independence. They know what this means. If they lose, they will hang as traitors. Benjamin Franklin says it plainly. We must all hang together, or most assuredly we shall all hang separately. They sign anyway. John Hancock signs first, his signature large and bold, so King George can read it without his spectacles. The United States of America is born, but declaring independence and winning it are two very different things. The British Empire sends an overwhelming force to crush the rebellion. 30,000 troops, including German mercenaries called Hessians, descend on New York. Washington's army is outnumbered, outgunned, and badly trained. The British win battle after battle. Washington retreats, again and again, losing New York, losing New Jersey, watching his army shrink as men desert or die. By December 1776, the revolution is on the brink of collapse. Washington's army has dwindled to fewer than 3,000 men. Enlistments expire at the end of the month. Most soldiers plan to go home. The cause seems lost. Thomas Paine, now serving with the army, writes another pamphlet by campfire light. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country, but he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Washington orders the words read aloud to every unit. Christmas night, 1776. The Delaware River is choked with ice. A freezing wind cuts through threadbare uniforms. Washington makes a desperate decision: attack. He leads 2,400 men across the icy river in the darkness, knowing that if they are discovered, they will be slaughtered. The boats struggle against ice and current. Men bail freezing water with their hats. Some boats nearly capsize. They reach the other side and march through a blizzard toward Trenton, where Hessian soldiers are celebrating Christmas. The march takes longer than expected. The password for the night is victory or death. At dawn, the Americans attack. The surprise is total. The Hessians, groggy from celebration, stumble into the streets in confusion. Within an hour, over 900 Hessians surrender. American casualties: 4 wounded, none killed in battle, though 2 freeze to death on the march. The victory is small, but its impact is enormous. The revolution is not dead. The army still fights. News of the victory spreads. Men who were about to go home re-enlist. New recruits arrive. Washington follows up with another victory at Princeton. The momentum has shifted. Winter, 1777 to 1778. Washington's army camps at Valley Forge, 20 miles from Philadelphia. It is hell. Men sleep in crude huts. There is no food, no shoes, no blankets. Disease spreads. Men freeze to death in the night. Washington writes to Congress, "Our sick naked, our well naked, our unfortunate men in captivity naked." 2,000 men die that winter. But something happens at Valley Forge. Something unexpected. A Prussian officer named Baron Friedrich von Steuben arrives. He is gruff, demanding, relentless, and he curses in 3 languages. He drills the soldiers every day, teaching them to march in formation, to load and fire in unison, to move as a single unit, to fight like professionals. The men curse him, but they learn. Von Steuben writes a manual, the first standardized training guide for the Continental Army. It becomes known as the Blue Book and will be used for decades. When spring arrives, the Continental Army marches out of Valley Forge transformed. They are no longer a mob. They are an army. Meanwhile, in upstate New York, a British army under General John Burgoyne marches south from Canada. intending to split the colonies in two. But American forces, led by General Horatio Gates and the brilliant but troubled Benedict Arnold, surround Burgoyne at Saratoga. The fighting is brutal. Arnold, fearless and reckless, leads charge after charge, inspiring his men with raw courage. During one assault, his horse is shot out from under him. The animal falls, crushing Arnold's leg, the same leg wounded earlier in the war. But Burgoyne realizes he is trapped. His supply lines are cut. Reinforcements are not coming. On October 17, 1777, he surrenders his entire army. It is the greatest American victory of the war, and it changes everything. In Paris, Benjamin Franklin has been working tirelessly. At 70 years old, he is America's most famous citizen, a scientist, inventor, writer, and now diplomat. He charms French nobles, dines with philosophers, and patiently negotiates with the French court, convincing them that America can win. But France is cautious. They will not openly support a losing cause. News of Saratoga reaches Paris. King Louis XVI makes his decision. France will openly support the American Revolution. In February 1778, France and America sign a treaty of alliance. French ships, soldiers, money, and supplies pour into America. The revolution now has the strength it desperately needs. But the war is far from over. Not all Americans support independence. Thousands remain loyal to the British Crown. They are called Loyalists, or Tories. Some fight alongside British troops. Others serve as guides, spies, and informers. The war becomes a civil war. Neighbor against neighbor. Brother against brother. In the South, Loyalist and Patriot militias wage brutal campaigns, burning homes, killing prisoners, showing no mercy. And the war's impact extends far beyond white colonists. Women manage farms and businesses while their husbands fight. They cook for troops, nurse the wounded, and carry water to soldiers during battle. Some, like Deborah Sampson, disguise themselves as men and fight. Margaret Corbin takes over her husband's cannon after he is killed at Fort Washington, firing until she is severely wounded. Thousands of enslaved black men see the war as a chance for freedom. The British offer freedom to any slave who joins their side. Thousands accept, forming regiments like the Black Pioneers. On the American side, some colonies allow black men to enlist. They fight at Bunker Hill, Trenton, Saratoga, and every major battle. One soldier, James Armistead Lafayette, serves as a spy, infiltrating British camps and providing crucial intelligence. After the war, many black soldiers are freed, but many others are betrayed, returned to slavery despite their service. The promise of equality in the Declaration remains unfulfilled. Native American nations face impossible choices. The war threatens their lands, their ways of life, their very survival. Most tribes, including the Iroquois Confederacy, side with the British, hoping to prevent American expansion into their territories. Joseph Brant, a Mohawk leader, leads warriors in devastating raids on American settlements. But the war splits the Iroquois Confederacy, ending centuries of unity. American forces respond with scorched earth campaigns, burning native villages, destroying crops, driving people from their homes. Regardless of which side they choose, native peoples pay a terrible price. Even as victory seems possible, betrayal strikes from within. Benedict Arnold, once the bravest general in the Continental Army, the hero of Saratoga, begins to change. He is passed over for promotion. Congress questions his expenses. His honor is challenged. He marries Peggy Shippen, a young woman with loyalist sympathies. Arnold feels unappreciated, bitter, angry, and he makes a choice that will make his name infamous forever. He contacts the British, offering to surrender West Point, a critical American fortress on the Hudson River, in exchange for money and a command in the British Army. 4 months. Arnold secretly passes information to the British, using his wife as a courier. He is given command of West Point and begins to weaken its defenses. But on September 23, 1780, the plot unravels. A British officer, Major John Andre, carrying Arnold's plans, is captured by American militiamen. Arnold learns of Andre's capture and flees, barely escaping to a British warship. Andre is hanged as a spy. Arnold escapes with his life, but his name becomes synonymous with treason. He will spend the rest of his life in Britain, despised by Americans, and never fully trusted by the British. 1780. The British shift their strategy, invading the South, hoping to exploit Loyalist support and crush the rebellion from below. They capture Savannah, then Charleston, taking over 5,000 American prisoners. British General Charles Cornwallis marches through the Carolinas, winning battle after battle. But resistance is fiercer than expected. Guerrilla fighters, led by men like Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, and Thomas Sumter, the Gamecock, harass British supply lines, ambush patrols, and disappear into swamps and forests. The British control the cities, but they cannot control the countryside. At Kings Mountain, a force of frontier militiamen surrounds and destroys a Loyalist army. At Cowpens, American General Daniel Morgan uses brilliant tactics to defeat a larger British force. The British are winning battles, but they are bleeding men, supplies, and morale. Washington sees an opportunity. 1781. General Cornwallis, the British commander in the South, moves his army to Yorktown, a small port on the Virginia coast, to await reinforcements by sea. But Washington learns that the French fleet, commanded by Admiral de Grasse, is sailing north. He makes a bold decision: march the entire army south, covering over 400 miles in secret, before the British realize what is happening. Washington and the French General Rochambeau move their forces with remarkable speed and coordination. At the same time, de Grasse's fleet sails into Chesapeake Bay, defeating a British fleet and cutting off Cornwallis's escape by sea. Cornwallis is trapped. American and French forces, 17,000 strong, surround Yorktown and begin a siege. For weeks, they bombard the British positions. Cannons fire day and night. The town is reduced to rubble. Cornwallis's army shrinks. Supplies run low. Disease spreads. Hope fades. On October 17, 1781, exactly 4 years after Saratoga, Cornwallis asks for terms. On October 19, the British surrender. As the British troops march out to lay down their weapons, their band plays a tune called "The World Turned Upside Down." It is. The war continues for another year, but everyone knows it is over. The American Revolution, against all odds, has succeeded. The war is over. But the most important moment is yet to come. Washington's officers urge him to seize power, to become king, to take what he has earned. Some officers, angry at Congress for not paying them, plot to overthrow the government. They want Washington to lead them. In March 1783, Washington addresses his officers at Newburgh. He pulls out a letter from Congress and struggles to read it. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out glasses. which few of his men have seen him wear. "Gentlemen, you will permit me to put on my spectacles, for I have not only grown gray, but almost blind in the service of my country." Grown men weep. The conspiracy collapses. Throughout history, victorious generals have seized power. Caesar, Cromwell, Napoleon, but Washington refuses. In December 1783, he appears before Congress in Annapolis, resigns his commission, and returns to his farm in Virginia. King George III hears the news and says, "If he does that, he will be the greatest man in the world." Washington's refusal to seize power sets a precedent that will define American democracy. The Treaty of Paris, signed in September 1783, officially recognizes American independence. The United States now stretches from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, from the Great Lakes to Spanish Florida. It is an enormous territory, larger than any republic in history. But winning independence and building a nation are two different things. Under the Articles of Confederation, created during the war, the central government is weak. Congress has no power to tax. It cannot regulate trade between states. It cannot enforce its own laws. States argue over borders, over money, over trade. The economy collapses. Veterans go unpaid. Farmers lose their land. In Massachusetts, a war veteran named Daniel Shays leads a rebellion against unfair taxes and debt laws. Farmers, many of them Revolutionary War veterans, march on courthouses, shutting them down to prevent foreclosures. When they march on a federal arsenal, the state militia fires on them, killing 4. Shays' rebellion is suppressed. But the message is clear: the government is too weak to maintain order. George Washington, watching from Mount Vernon, is alarmed. There are combustibles in every state which a spark might set fire to. The nation is on the brink of collapse. May 1787. Delegates from 12 states. Rhode Island refuses to participate. Meet in Philadelphia. Their official mission: revise the Articles of Confederation. Their actual goal: create an entirely new government. They meet in the Pennsylvania State House, the same building where the Declaration was signed, and they lock the doors. Windows are kept closed despite the summer heat, to prevent eavesdropping. For 4 months, they argue. Large states want representation by population. Small states demand equal representation. Southern states want slaves counted for representation, but not taxation. Northern states object. Some delegates want a strong central government. Others fear tyranny. The debates grow heated. Some delegates threaten to walk out. The convention nearly collapses. James Madison, a small, soft-spoken Virginian, takes detailed notes of every session. His knowledge of history and political philosophy guides the debates. He proposes the Virginia Plan, which becomes the foundation of the Constitution. Roger Sherman of Connecticut proposes the Great Compromise, a Congress with 2 houses, one based on population, one with equal representation for every state. After weeks of debate, the compromise is accepted. They create a government of 3 branches: legislative, executive, judicial, each with powers to check the others. They divide power between the federal government and the states. They design a system intended to prevent any person or group from gaining too much power. On September 17, 1787, 39 delegates signed the Constitution. As Benjamin Franklin, now 81 years old, signs, he looks at a painting of the sun on the back of Washington's chair. He says, "I have often looked at that picture behind the president without being able to tell whether it was rising or setting. But now I know that it is a rising sun. But the fight is not over. The Constitution must be ratified by 9 states. Many Americans are suspicious. Where are the protections for individual rights? Won't this new government become as tyrannical as Britain? Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay write a series of essays defending the Constitution. They are published in newspapers under the pseudonym Publius. There are 85 essays in total, known as the Federalist Papers. They remain the most important explanation of American government ever written. But the opposition, called Anti-Federalists, is strong. Patrick Henry, the fiery orator who once said, "Give me liberty or give me death," opposes the Constitution, fearing it gives too much power to the central government to win ratification. Madison promises to add amendments protecting individual rights. Slowly, the states ratify. Delaware first, then Pennsylvania, then New Jersey. On June 21, 1788, New Hampshire becomes the 9th state, and the Constitution takes effect. But 2 important states, Virginia and New York, have not yet ratified. Without them, the new nation cannot survive. After fierce debates, both states narrowly approve, by votes of 89 to 79 in Virginia, and 30 to 27 in New York. The United States of America, under the Constitution, is born. In 1789, the Electoral College unanimously elects George Washington as the first president. He is inaugurated on April 30th in New York City. He takes the oath of office on a Bible, kisses it, and says, "So help me God," establishing a tradition. John Adams becomes vice president. Thomas Jefferson is appointed Secretary of State. Alexander Hamilton becomes Secretary of the Treasury. The government begins to function. True to his promise, Madison proposes 12 amendments. 10 are ratified and become the Bill of Rights. They guarantee freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, the right to bear arms, protection from unreasonable search and seizure, the right to a fair trial, protection from cruel and unusual punishment. These rights are not granted by the government. They are limits on government power. Protections for the people. But the young government immediately faces challenges. Hamilton, brilliant and ambitious, proposes that the federal government assume all state debts from the war, creating a strong national economy. Jefferson and Madison oppose this, fearing it gives too much power to the federal government and favors wealthy speculators over common people. The debate grows bitter. Finally, they reach a compromise. The federal government will assume the debts, and in exchange, the nation's capital will move south to a new city on the Potomac River. That city will be named Washington. Hamilton creates the first bank of the United States, establishes a national currency, and builds a financial system that makes America creditworthy. His work is brilliant, but it divides the nation. Political factions begin to form. Hamilton's supporters, who favor a strong central government, call themselves Federalists. Jefferson's supporters, who favor states' rights and agriculture over industry, call themselves Democratic Republicans. Washington hates this division. He believes political parties will destroy the nation, but he cannot stop it. Friendships shatter. Hamilton and Jefferson, once colleagues, become bitter enemies. Even Jefferson and Adams, who worked together on the Declaration, grow apart. In 1794, farmers in western Pennsylvania rebel against a federal tax on whiskey. The Whiskey Rebellion threatens the authority of the new government. Washington, now 62 years old, personally leads 13,000 militia troops to suppress the rebellion. The rebels disperse without a fight. The message is clear: Federal laws will be enforced. In 1796, Washington refuses to run for a third term. He publishes a farewell address, warning the nation about the dangers ahead. He warns against political parties. They serve to organize faction, to give it an artificial and extraordinary force, and to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation the will of a party. He warns against foreign entanglements. It is our true policy to steer clear of permanent alliances with any portion of the foreign world. He warns against sectionalism, hatred, and division. The name of American must always exalt the just pride of patriotism. His warnings are largely ignored. The election of 1796 becomes a bitter fight between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Adams wins, but narrowly. Jefferson becomes vice president, even though they oppose each other. During Adams' presidency, tensions with France nearly lead to war. Fear of foreign influence leads Congress to pass the Alien and Sedition Acts, harsh laws that make it illegal to criticize the government. Newspaper editors are arrested. Immigrants are targeted. Jefferson and Madison secretly write resolutions for Kentucky and Virginia, declaring the laws unconstitutional. The crisis deepens. The nation teeters on the edge. The election of 1800 becomes one of the ugliest in American history. Adams and Jefferson, once friends, now enemies, unleash brutal attacks on each other. Jefferson supporters call Adams a tyrant. Adams supporters call Jefferson an atheist and a radical. Jefferson wins. But the electoral vote is tied with Aaron Burr, his running mate. The decision goes to the House of Representatives, which votes 36 times before finally choosing Jefferson. On March 4, 1801, Thomas Jefferson is inaugurated as the third president. John Adams, bitter and heartbroken, leaves Washington before dawn, refusing to attend the inauguration. But something remarkable happens. Power passes peacefully from one party to another. In most countries, at most times in history, such a transfer would have led to violence, coup, civil war. But in America, it happens through votes and arguments, not bullets and swords. Jefferson calls it the Revolution of 1800, as important as the Revolution of 1776. In his inaugural address, Jefferson tries to heal the wounds. We are all Republicans. We are all Federalists. If there be any among us who would wish to dissolve this union, let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated where reason is left free to combat it. The founding era is ending. Many of the founders are aging. Some have already died. Washington dies in 1799, mourned by the entire nation. Hamilton dies in 1804, killed in a duel with Aaron Burr. Adams and Jefferson, after years of silence, begin writing letters again, reconciling in their old age. They die on the same day, July 4, 1826, exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence. Adams' last words are, "Thomas Jefferson survives." But Jefferson had died a few hours earlier. The founding era leaves a complex legacy. The ideals of the Declaration, that all men are created equal, are not fulfilled. Slavery remains. Women cannot vote. Native peoples are pushed from their lands. The founders knew this. Jefferson himself called slavery a moral deprivation and a hideous blot. Yet he owned slaves his entire life. The Constitution they created allowed slavery to continue, counting enslaved people as 3/5 of a person for representation, but giving them no rights. It would take a civil war and another century of struggle before those contradictions began to be resolved. But the idea was planted that government exists to serve the people. that all are created equal, that rights come not from kings or governments, but from our very humanity. That power must be limited, divided, that people have the right to change their government when it fails them. It was an idea so powerful, so dangerous, that it would spread across the world. Within decades, revolutions would sweep through France, through Latin America, through Europe, all inspired by the words written in Philadelphia in 1776. The American experiment proved that people could govern themselves, that they did not need kings or nobles, that ordinary citizens could create a government based on reason, on debate, on compromise. It proved that power could transfer peacefully, that political enemies did not have to kill each other, that disagreement was not treason. These were radical ideas, revolutionary ideas, and they were born from struggle, from farmers standing on Lexington Green, knowing they might die, from soldiers freezing at Valley Forge, refusing to quit, from delegates in Philadelphia, arguing through the summer heat, trying to create something that had never existed, from Washington, walking away from power when he could have seized it, from Madison, crafting a system of checks and balances, trying to prevent tyranny, from Jefferson, writing words that challenged every throne in the world, from Franklin, charming French nobles and negotiating alliances, using wit and wisdom to save a revolution, from Hamilton, building a financial system from nothing, creating the foundations of American prosperity, from Adams, defending the law even when it was unpopular, insisting that America must be a government of laws and not of men, from countless others whose names we do not know. The woman who carried water to soldiers on the battlefield, the spy who passed messages in invisible ink, the farmer who left his plow to fight, the sailor who manned the guns on a privateer, the enslaved man who fought for freedom, hoping his children might live free, the native warrior who tried to protect his people's land, every person who risked everything for an idea. The founding era was not perfect. The founders were not saints. They were human, flawed, often hypocritical. They spoke of liberty while owning slaves. They spoke of equality while denying rights to women. They spoke of justice while taking native lands. But they also created something unprecedented, a system designed to correct its own mistakes, a constitution that could be amended, a government that could be changed without violence, a set of ideals that future generations could use to demand their own rights. When abolitionists fought to end slavery, they quoted the Declaration. When suffragettes fought for women's right to vote, they quoted the Declaration. When civil rights activists marched for equality, they quoted the Declaration. The founders gave them the words, the ideals, the tools to continue the revolution. Because the American Revolution did not end at Yorktown. It did not end with the Constitution. It did not end with the Bill of Rights. It continues. Every time citizens vote, they continue the revolution. Every time people speak freely, they honor the First Amendment. Every time the powerful are held accountable, they fulfill the founders' vision. Every time the nation moves closer to its ideals, they prove that the experiment works. The founding era gave birth to a nation, but it also gave birth to an idea that people have the right to govern themselves, that freedom is worth fighting for, that all human beings are created equal and deserve to be treated with dignity. These ideas were born in blood, in sacrifice, in years of struggle and suffering. They were born when ordinary people decided they would no longer accept tyranny. They were born when colonists threw tea into Boston Harbor, when Paul Revere rode through the night, when farmers stood on Lexington Green, when Washington crossed the Delaware, when Jefferson put pen to paper, when delegates argued in Philadelphia, when soldiers endured Valley Forge, when the world turned upside down at Yorktown. The American Revolution was not just the birth of a nation. It was the birth of an idea that would change the world. An idea that still echoes, still inspires, still challenges us to be worthy of the sacrifice that created it, to continue the work the founders began, to form a more perfect union. The revolution is not over. It never will be, because the work of freedom, the work of equality, the work of justice, is never finished. Each generation must fight its own battles, face its own challenges, make its own sacrifices. But the founders gave us the tools. They gave us a constitution. They gave us a Bill of Rights. They gave us a system of government that can adapt, that can change, that can grow. Most importantly, they gave us an example. They showed us that ordinary people, when united by a common cause, can defeat the most powerful empire on earth. They showed us that ideas can be stronger than armies. They showed us that sacrifice for a greater good is never in vain. They showed us that freedom is not given. It is earned. This was the American Revolution. This was the founding era. This was the moment when a group of colonies on the edge of the world, dismissed as backward, as primitive, as insignificant, rose up and changed human history. From 13 fragile colonies to a united nation, from subjects of a king to citizens of a republic, from impossible dream to undeniable reality. Born from struggle and hope, the United States emerged as a fragile but determined nation, built on ideals of liberty and self-government. It was not perfect. It would make terrible mistakes. It would face terrible challenges. But it survived. And it gave the world a gift. The proof that people could govern themselves. The proof that democracy could work. The proof that freedom, true freedom, was possible. The founders did not create a perfect nation. They created a nation capable of becoming better. A nation that could learn from its mistakes. A nation that could expand its definition of equality. A nation that could move, however slowly, toward justice. That is their true legacy. Not perfection, but possibility. Not a finished work, but a foundation on which future generations could build. The American Revolution was the beginning, not the end. And its story, its struggle, its sacrifice, its triumph, reminds us of what is possible when ordinary people refuse to accept tyranny, when they stand up, speak out, and fight for something greater than themselves. This is the story of the American Revolution. This is the story of the founding of a nation. This is how America was born. And this is why it matters. Because the ideals born in that struggle, the sacrifices made in that war, the system created in that convention, still shape our world today, still challenge us, still inspire us, still call us to be better, to continue the work the founders began, to defend the freedoms they won, to expand the rights they proclaimed, to build the more perfect union they envisioned. The revolution is not over. It lives in every American who votes, in every person who speaks freely, in every citizen who demands justice, in every generation that refuses to accept tyranny. The founders lit a flame. It is our responsibility to keep it burning, to pass it on to the next generation, to ensure that their sacrifice, their courage, their vision, was not in vain. This is the legacy of the American Revolution. This is the promise of the founding era. This is the story of how a nation was born, and why it endures. Thank you for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please share it. If it moved you, please let others discover it. If it inspired you, please remember it. History is not just about the past. It is about understanding who we are, where we came from, and what we can become. The American Revolution changed the world. Its lessons still matter. Its struggles still echo. Its ideals still challenge us. Remember the farmers at Lexington. Remember the soldiers at Valley Forge. Remember the delegates in Philadelphia. Remember Washington, Jefferson, Adams, Franklin, Madison, Hamilton, and all the others. Remember the women who fought and sacrificed. Remember the enslaved people who hoped for freedom. Remember the ordinary people who did extraordinary things. They created something unprecedented. They gave us a gift. It is up to us to protect it, to honor it, and to continue the work they began. The American Revolution was not just about independence from Britain. It was about independence for humanity. About the right of people everywhere to govern themselves. About the dignity and worth of every human being. About the power of ideas to change the world. That revolution continues. Every day. In every act of courage. In every defense of freedom. In every demand for justice. The founders started something they knew they could not finish. They trusted future generations to continue the work. That responsibility now falls to us. To defend the Constitution. To protect the Bill of Rights. To expand the meaning of equality. To ensure that government of the people, by the people, and for the people, does not perish from the earth. This is our inheritance. This is our responsibility. This is our challenge. The American Revolution is not history. It is a living legacy. It is a promise yet to be fulfilled. It is a challenge to every generation. Will we be worthy of the sacrifice that created this nation? Will we defend the freedoms they won? Will we expand the rights they proclaimed? Will we continue the revolution they began? That is the question the founding era asks us. That is the challenge it leaves us. That is the legacy we must honor. The American Revolution. The founding of a nation. The birth of an idea. An idea that changed the world. An idea that still matters. An idea worth fighting for. This is our story. This is our heritage. This is our responsibility. Remember it. Honor it. Continue it. The revolution is not over. It has only just begun.